Excited to be up here. Oh, look, we've got our pictures up, Matt.
Look at
real nice.
that. That was back when I had more hair.
So yeah, we'll start with some quick introductions about our backgrounds, and then we'll kick off talking about driving retail success. So,
well,
Matt.
Thank you, Josh. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you all for coming. I'm sorry for the people in the back that are having to stand up, but there's plenty of chairs here. My name is Matt Waller, and I moved here in 1994, and things have changed quite a bit since then. I came as a visiting assistant professor. I started a software company called Mercari Technologies that up until 2010 had the claim to fame of raising the most venture capital in the state. Up until 2010, we'd raised $30 million during the dot-com boom, sold it in 2002, went back to the university. I was dean. Well, I started the Department of Supply Chain Management, academic department, in 2011. That academic department now is ranked number one in North America by Gartner. Thank you. Believe it or not, we actually had a goal of being number one. We did the strategic planning in 2010 within 10 years, and it's a miracle that we did it. But they re-rank it every 2 years, so we just got our third number one ranking this year, and thank goodness they only do it every 2 years. I was dean of the Walton College from 2015 to last year, and now I'm back on the faculty, and I'm a professor of supply chain management. And then I also work with New Road Capital Partners. It's a private equity firm in Northwest Arkansas that focuses a lot on what I call the retail value chain. And then I'm also on the board of Arkansas Blue Cross Blue Shield, the Walton Arts Center, and the Walmart AMP, and work with this brilliant man quite a bit. I don't know how many of you know Josh, and he's going to introduce himself, but I'll tell you, he came up and introduced himself to me at Blake Street House about a year and a half ago. And what we're talking about today, and we're just going to be sharing about the retail value chain and some opportunities, but he is a brilliant man and really good at getting things done. And so in a year and a half, a lot has happened. You'll hear a little bit about it today.
That's kind. Thank you for that, making me embarrassed. But yeah, Josh Stanley, managing partner at Fieldbook Studio. I'll speak first about Fieldbook just to share that. This is a $10 million studio that is a venture building studio with the mission of building 5 new companies in Arkansas. So we are based in Northwest Arkansas, but this is a Arkansas statewide initiative, and that's over the next 3 years. What's great about Fieldbook is we have amazing partners behind us in VentureWell, who's backed by Walton Family Foundation, and also a state agency in ADFA. And then we're a part of a larger venture studio group called High Alpha Innovation, which has venture studios across the nation, mostly in universities. We're actually the first studio that they've stood up that's not attached to a university, but they have studios at Purdue, UNC, and Notre Dame. And then a little bit about me. So I moved here in 2019. I'm a big advocate for this region. It has taken time for me to build that pride and advocacy. I want to talk about that as we talk through the storyline today of why startups in Northwest Arkansas have a strategic edge. But I came here because I started a software development firm in Las Vegas called Teamwork. It got acquired by a software development firm based here called RevUnit. That happened in 2019, or 2017, sorry. And I ended up taking over as president of that firm in about 2018, saw them through a private equity transaction in 2019. Before all that, I've actually co-founded 6 companies now. I've been a part of 3 different exits. But before all that, I was in product management, program management, project management. I kind of danced in that realm for a long time. The translation layer of software development with companies like Backcountry.com, 1-800-CONTACTS, and Zappos. So I spent a lot of time in with Amazon in Seattle. It was post-transaction when they had acquired Zappos. So that's me. And then we're here to talk about driving retail success. So I think one of the things we want to really focus on today, we're going to say some edgy things. I hope we say edgy things. I hope we don't just speak platitudes at you for the next 38 minutes. I hope you find this entertaining. I hope you find this insightful and compelling. If you have thought about entrepreneurship or interested in investing in entrepreneurship in this region, we hope we're talking your language here. So the first thing we're going to dig in on, beyond seeing our faces again, that's us again. Text got a little choppy there, but retail value chain is our right to win. So when we say there is a strategic advantage in this region, the first question you should ask is why? Like, why is there a strategic advantage in Northwest Arkansas for startups? So I'm going to point to Matt here. I'm going to ask Matt to first and foremost, we see retail value chain on the title of this summit. We see it here in the title of our fireside chat. Matt, what is the retail value chain? Why are we using this phrase?
Well, it's a great phrase to use for the retail value chain capital of the world. I first started reading about what was going on here in the late 80s, early 90s when I was at Penn State. And I started reading about, Walmart sharing information, sales data with suppliers, and teams moving here. When I moved here, there were only a few teams here. I'll go into that a little bit more later, but first of all, what is the retail value chain? The retail value chain is made up of three components. One has to do with physical flow. And the reason I'm saying this, by the way, the reason it's worth knowing what it is because we're claiming that Northwest Arkansas has an unfair right to win in this space. And so we need to be clear about what we're talking about. So you have the physical flows, the informational flows, and the financial flows. Those are the three flows, but it's everything from the consumer to the retailer to physical distribution to production and sourcing. It's that channel, but with the focus on the end, the retail and the consumer. So when you look for innovation that can occur here, and I've been studying the innovation that's been going on here for 30 years in this particular area. I've written a lot about it. I've done academic research on it. So we'll talk a little bit about that later. But that's at a high level, that's what we mean when we say retail value chain.
Yeah, love that. I want to call out something Dr. Waller said in the very first sentence that you spoke there, that this is the retail value chain capital of the world. And we believe mutually that there's a right for us to make that claim and a reason for us to make that claim in the same vein that mountain biking capital of the world was made several years ago. And I was sharing a story with Dr. Waller. I'm going to bounce between calling you Matt and Dr. Waller. Sorry for that.
But you can call me Matt.
Okay, good. But I was in North Carolina last week. We were meeting with somebody in relation to a company we're looking at building. And this is someone in North Carolina in the construction industry who loves mountain biking. And he spoke, as soon as I mentioned that we came from Bentonville, he's like, oh, I know I need to get out there. Like, I've been hearing all about the mountain biking in Bentonville in Northwest Arkansas. I got to find a way to get out there at some point. And it struck me because I'm like, man, this has taken years to get to that state where lots of people are talking about this region from that perspective. But I think it all started with us just declaring, I say us as it wasn't us up on this stage, but the region and the Walton family, I believe, really declaring this is going to be the mountain biking capital of the world. Yes, that required an investment, that required other activities. So Matt, when we say that this should be and is the retail value chain capital of the world, what do we need to do to get that flag planted to where we own it?
Well, there's several things we need to do, but first of all, I'll say this, and I think this will come out more as we talk. We have more talent here in Northwest Arkansas around the retail value chain than any place from a density perspective on earth. If you talk to even salespeople on teams here in town and compare them to salespeople on teams, say, in Cincinnati serving Kroger, the salespeople here know about supply chain management logistics than the supply chain logistics people on the teams in Cincinnati. But your question is, what do we need, right? And I want to say one more thing about why we need it. Heartland Forward and Ross Duvall is here. I don't know, how many of you are familiar with Heartland Forward? Oh, good. If you're not, I recommend you go to their website, Heartland Forward, and look at some of their content. But Ross has done research. He worked for the Milken Institute, directly for Mike Milken for 20 years. But he's here leading Heartland Forward. But he's done a lot of research that shows that one of the most important drivers of economic growth for a region is firm formation, company formation. And so we need as a region to focus on something that we already have an advantage in, right? And we can do other things for sure. But the best thing we can do to stimulate this region is to focus on things where we have an unfair right to win. And this is one of them.
I love that. I'm going to call out, we have this slide up right now. There's a little bookmark looking visual over there. I think what would be to your right if you're staring at the screen. The very last one, the highest metro area in cumulative revenue. So what that means is the cumulative revenue flowing into headquartered businesses in this region is higher than San Francisco, higher than Boston, higher than Washington, D.C. And these are cities, top-tier cities, that are recognized for their economic development, for their entrepreneurial achievements. So I think that alone speaks to this opportunity. It's a leading indicator of where we can go. We already have the anchor industry here in the retail value chain space. The reason why we're the 6th highest in cumulative revenue, yes, it's Walmart, Sam's Club, J.B. Hunt, Tyson, Simmons, George's, ArcBest, the list goes on. The subject matter expertise that Matt's talking about is the talent that's working for those organizations. That subject matter expertise mixed with opportunity, like there are pains in this space, there are pains in the retail value chain that need to be solved. So when you have an anchor like we have, the anchors that we have in revenue, this is what allows someone to make a decision to move here. Everybody in this room, I would assume, has moved at some point in their life, and maybe some of you have moved because of a job. So however you got here today, maybe you were born here, maybe you moved here, very likely, the story for me was, if this doesn't work out, what else do I do? And I look at the region, I look at the area. This happened to me when I moved to Vegas. So I moved to Vegas from Salt Lake City a long time ago. I just graduated, or got my graduate degree. My wife wanted to move closer to her family. And that was the first thing I asked, like, yeah, I got a job at Zappos, but what am I gonna do if that doesn't work out? Where else am I gonna go? And my options were pretty limited. It was MGM, and like, I'm not a big gambling fan. That's just not my MO. So I didn't really like that, but I did it because my wife and her family. So I think
you gamble on businesses.
Well played. Yes, I'm a high risk individual in a lot of ways, but calculated risk may be the right way to look at that. But the point being that we have those anchors, and the analogy I've used a lot in the past is a region is a lot like a music festival. And we have some incredible headliners. We have amazing headliners. They're from the 70s. So we got the Journey and the Rolling Stones. These are amazing headliners. They're still going to draw massive crowds. What we're lacking is the rest of that lineup card, that mid-sized font and small-sized font, the bar scenes, the bar scene bands that are up and coming, and the bands that are on the next up. So that's what we all need to collectively be working to build, and the opportunity is so rich and so ripe and ready. And I think our one of our missions today, and we're taking a long time on this slide, but one of our missions today is really anchor that home that the retail value chain is our established capability as a region, and this is where there's a right to win. If you're a founder, it's a right to win if you're an investor looking to invest in businesses. So with that in mind, one of the ways you can validate that makes sense, that the retail value chain is the right capability for you to build a company in, is to look at where the money has flowed in the past. So with the help of the Northwest Arkansas Council, we pulled together some quick stats out of PitchBook. Here we go. And we looked at the recent decade of investments. So venture dollars flowing into companies. We did have to recategorize what is a category that falls under retail value chain, because that's not a normalized category that they use. That is that's a phrase we're anchoring on. But if you recategorize and look at the deal flow, look at dollars that have flowed into this region in the last decade or more, roughly 40% of all dollars are flowing into retail value chain companies. So investors believe that that's our right to win. The next highest in this list, it's not labeled here, is biotech, around in the 27% range. So with that in mind, Matt, you represent an investor. You're a partner at a strategic partner, advising partner. Forgive me where I'm messing up on that title, but you work with New Road Capital. As you think about deal flow and opportunities in this region, why aren't we seeing more startups? Why aren't we seeing more startups in this region?
Well, there's a lot of reasons. I know, I'm going to give you two real quick reasons. One is when I started Mercari Technologies, we got up to about 20 employees really quickly. Again, this is back in the 90s, but I couldn't find the right people to hire. That was a big problem I had. I think it's easier now, but I had to open an office in Washington, D.C., and so I'd spend 1 week here and 1 week in Washington, D.C. for several years. We grew to 120 at our peak, and so we had 100 in D.C. and 20 here. But the kind of people we couldn't hire were engineering type people. We need more engineers in the area, period. Second thing, and that's coming from the former dean of a business school, so. But the second thing I think we need is capital, right, to fund these early stage startups. Now, New Road, the company I'm personally involved with, it's more private equity than venture capital. I think we need more earlier stage companies. I mean, there's a bunch of us, and some of you are in here, that we've been angels, for early. I would rather, if I pick other things being equal, if I had two firms that were starting in the retail value chain, say either starting or maybe scaling, somewhere in that range, right? And one was in Northwest Arkansas, and one was somewhere else in the United States, I would invest in the one in Northwest Arkansas. And I've actually done that personally. I really think it's true. And you're going to see some data here in a minute that kind of underlines that.
Yeah, I want to add to, and we might bring this topic back up in a moment with some other visuals and other data we want to share. It's hard. It's hard to take a leap of faith. It's hard. What do we know about successful entrepreneurs? We know the most successful ones are over the age of 40. So these are individuals who have some work experience. They've led teams. They have probably a subject matter expertise. Maybe more importantly, they have life experiences. They've earned the grit and resilience that's required in startups. They're maybe a little better at being resourceful at that age because they have a network to lean on. But what they also have at that age is houses and cars and kids. You have a lot of dependencies, and you're in the prime earning years of your life. You're at the period of time where you're bringing the most money in you've probably brought in your life. It's very hard to take what is on average 18 to 24 months of no salary to found a company. That's the typical average for a startup founder or founding team. So yeah, that's a big ask. The highest probability of success category of people is also the most challenged to take that leap of faith because of the dependencies and life needs that they have. So I do think we need, and we'll say this again later, I think, we need more programming, initiatives. We need more support for the highest probability category of folks to reduce that risk. To get them off the sidelines and on the field playing the entrepreneurial game requires some kind of support and help, I think. Go ahead.
One thing I'd add to that, it's not just young people. Again, Heartland Forward, Ross Duvall's done some research that shows, the people that are most likely to succeed in a new firm, a startup, aren't they over 50 or 40?
Yeah, it's over 40.
Over 40. I can't remember the numbers, but they were pretty significant. And so we also need programming to help them. A lot of times, I just turned 60 recently. I know everyone thinks I look like I turned 50, but no, it's 60. No, but seriously, I'm finally at the stage where, I'm an empty nester, right? I could start a company now. I'm kind of at a good time to do it. I'm in a place where I could actually do it. But it would have been better when I was 40, and that would have been really hard. When I actually did it, I was younger than that. But I think that you're right. But we need to apply that to older age ranges as well.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. So we're gonna share a different way to think about founding retail value chain companies in this region. I think it's different in the sense of it's not what the narrative has been for the last few decades. So we're going to start with one. Now is the time to repeat what works. So we want to talk about what has worked in Northwest Arkansas over the last few decades. We're going to start with these quotes, and they got cut off in the transition from our file to the files here, but focus on what you know well and let that be the foundation of your business. That's actually I think that's a Sam Walton quote. Our job is to find a few intelligent things to do, not to something, every damn thing in the world. That was a Charlie Munger quote. Stick to the basics, do them better than anyone else, and success will follow.
That last one is
that Sam?
Walton.
Yeah. So I think the first one was actually Jeff Bezos. So these are all either retail value chain founders or investors who have invested in the retail space. It's an anchor that we want to call out because there's a great book that Dan and Chip Heath had a few years ago where they talked about bright spots or positive deviations or positive results in the face of challenges. And one that we've noticed and picked up on, and this started with a thesis that Dr. Waller, myself, and a co-founder of RevUnit, Michael Palladino, have been talking about now for over a year, and that the success stories of this region in the last few decades have actually been professional services companies, in large part. The majority of the success stories out of this region are professional services companies.
Let that sink in just for a minute.
So when we say that, we mean digital agencies, think CPG brokerages. There's probably some in this at this conference today, and if not in the room. Software development firms like RevUnit, agencies of record for CPG brands. That earlier slide mentioned we have over 1,400 CPGs officed in this region. So what comes when you have 1,400 CPGs in one area is there's a lot of flow of activity between them and retailers. They have needs, they have opportunities, they have problems to be solved, and then agencies are formed around those needs. And that's what a large part of our success story in the last 2 decades has been. It has been professional services companies, in large part tech-enabled, but still heavy in the services space.
But look at those numbers. I mean, that's pretty remarkable, isn't it? 40% were up to 10 million, 27% were 10 to 50, but 15 of them were over 50 million. And what's interesting about it, and I used to always hear, there's not a lot of exits here, but many of these exits don't, there's exits even not in this list that we know about that are not public. One of the reasons I know about some of them is because they were run by alumni, students I'd kept in contact with over the years, and I'm kind of nosy, and I ask, and I've kept a spreadsheet on some of these. It's pretty remarkable.
Yeah. So the reason we did this study and we dug up this data started from a place of hearing from venture capitalists and having professional services agency friends trying to raise money to grow, hearing they're not getting any conversations. There was no interest. And at the same time, we have personal relationships where we know of services companies that have exited with 8 to 10x multiples on EBITDA, which is not a bad multiple. You're climbing towards what a traditional SaaS multiple might look like. We saw 12 to 50 plus X returns on those investments. So we're asking ourselves, why is venture avoiding a space that has worked so well for this region? Maybe it's the deal sizes aren't big enough. And then we pull this data and we come to find, over 33% or over 50 million in total value. 8 of those 15 deals are actually over $100 million. So we probably should have broken that out separately, but I just want to call that out. Also interesting, 60% of the deals, most of these deals came in Northwest Arkansas. This does include all of Arkansas. Most of these deals, though, were from outside firms buying firms here in the region. And
that's a key part of the puzzle, actually.
We could posit that if you're a firm in the digital media space and you need presence that's close to Walmart, we could either build that in-house and go stand up an office in Northwest Arkansas, or I could acquire a firm that's already here. And what we've seen in the last 5 years, we don't have the stats to back this up, but just our own personal experiences and connectivity to this industry, there's been a lot of consolidation in the last 5 years, meaning firms in this region have been bought. We're talking, in fact, Matt, I want to ask, what success stories have you seen? Let's story tell a little bit here. Is there a firm you've seen succeed here, and what have you seen succeed?
Let's go back earlier.
Okay? Go ahead.
So when I formed Mercari Technologies, there were 2 other companies formed. One was Thompson & Murray, and the other one was Mitchell Communications. I mean, the same year. And, Saatchi and Thompson & Murray was started by Mike Thompson and Andy Murray. That got bought by Saatchi & Saatchi. And they renamed it Saatchi & Saatchi X, which it still exists. That was a huge exit, right? So I'm talking, I don't remember what year that was, but it was a long time ago. I can't remember if it was the late 90s or early 2000s. I get confused. Mitchell Communications is another one. My company, Mercari Technologies. And then later, I remember when Collective Bias was formed. Acorn, which focused on influence. They were an agency. They are an agency. Agencies for facilitating influencers, connecting brands with influencers. Agencies like that are needed. Well, that started in Northwest Arkansas, and really, Thompson Murray, Saatchi & Saatchi X, really started shopper marketing, which was a new category of marketing in the 90s. So you look at it, a lot of these were very innovative ideas. We could talk a long time about why they were so innovative, but they were agencies. Mine was a software company. Mine was an exception to that.
Yeah, I think I want to add and then ask a follow-on question. The add is, as you think about the consolidation that's happened in the last 5 years, we simultaneously have not seen a ton of starts in the services space. There haven't been as many formations in the last 5 years while the consolidation or acquisitions have happened. So my curiosity is, as you think about the opportunity that still lies, what happens in a larger agency?
Opportunity to what?
The opportunity that still lies in this region for a professional services company. If you were starting one today that serviced retail value chain customers, thinking about generative AI, what approach would you take?
And it tempts me every time I think about this. and I know we're working on this a little bit, but so what I would do, so some of these companies that have been acquired in the past 5 years, right? They've been acquired by these firms from outside. They get acquired, and the firms say, oh, we need to make these more efficient. So they say, we don't need marketing. We've already got our own marketing. They lay off all the marketing people, not knowing that a couple of those people were secret sauce type people. You know, when you've got a firm less than 100 people, you've got to be really careful about who you let go, because you could be killing the goose that lays the golden eggs. And so, but some of those geese that have been killed are actually they're still alive here in Northwest Arkansas. And I would go to them and I'd say, hey, can you think, and I've actually done this, hey, maybe it's an alum, former alum, hey, Sally, I know you worked for so-and-so that was acquired by this company in Timbuktu. What opportunities do you see in the market? Now, I know you don't have the money you had to get a new job, Sally, but what if I could give you some money to leave your job and start a new firm in this space somewhere? What would you do? 100% of the people I've asked this to have given me good answers. 100%. And what if I could, build a team around them, right, that could advise them? Well, we have all these people that, see this, look at this, 18, 15, 12. Most of those people are still in Northwest Arkansas that had these exits. They have the networks, they have the capital, they have the know-how, right? A huge opportunity, my goodness. Well, this is the kind of thing we need to be doing as a region if we want to have lots of startups.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think the opportunity that generative AI offers, which is fine, the opportunity generative AI, excuse me, the opportunity it allows for is for a services company to look a lot more like a SaaS business. Why investors don't like SaaS businesses? Professional services companies, or why they like SaaS and don't like professional services companies. They like the recurring revenue of SaaS. They like that as you scale revenue on a SaaS model, supposedly, expenses do not scale at that same rate. So what you have potential to do with generative AI is to create higher efficiencies and effectiveness in how you build that business from scratch so that you can maybe reduce that ratio of revenue growth to expenses. If we can be more efficient leveraging technology tools that allow for content creation to be faster, a lot of the hands-on keyboard work of a professional services company can be replaced by generative AI with the right team in place that understands how to build composite architecture and string together the kinds of tools that are available today.
Yeah, this is hypothesis number 3 of what we've talked about today. Yeah. Generative AI can help agencies scale to be more like SaaS companies from a financial perspective.
Yes. All right. We're going to jump to the next section. Oh, here we go. Our text came back here. Acceleration requires formation. So a lot of what we've been talking about is the opportunity that's here in this region, the ripeness of it. We need to accelerate formation in this region. We need people in this room who have that entrepreneurial spark, that energy, that grit, that resilience to take a leap of faith on themselves and lean into what they know. We need investors to lean in on those individuals, and we need programming that helps support those who want to take that leap of faith. So we want to talk about the trends that have happened. This is a nationwide trend. So this is from Crunchbase. It's talking about the alarming decline in formation. That was actually part of the title here of this article. Yes, since 2020, where we had a spike, this doesn't look at pre-2020, where actually during the pandemic, there was a spike in entrepreneurship. But since then, we've had a major decline in formation. It's not just in the US, it's showing here in EU and Israel as well. And feel that in this region. We feel that impact. Yes, there's economic uncertainty right now. It's hard to want to take a leap of faith when inflation is high, interest rates are high, geopolitical tensions are high. It's hard when there's a highly cautious state to want to take a leap.
Yeah, I mean, also regulatory issues around M&A are slowing things down quite a bit in our country. It's interesting, you might say, why did we include Israel on this, right? You see that it's the gray line bar in the middle. It's pretty small there. But when you think about the number of people in Israel, if we scaled this, it would look quite different. I don't know if you know this. This is kind of an interesting fact. If you look at companies that are formed out of universities that eventually become formed out of universities or formed by alumni of a university, that's what I should say, that eventually become unicorns. That means a valuation of $1 billion or greater. Number one, of course, is Stanford. Number two is Tel Aviv University. That's not a very big school. It's hard to believe, really, but it's true, and that's one of the reasons it's on here. But EU has been behind the United States for a long time. But when you look at these numbers, right? Look at 2020, 2021. You're going from over 6,000 to about 5,000 in 21, down to 2,000 in 2022, down to 1,000 in 2023. This is not good, ladies and gentlemen. This is one of, right, and Ross, your research has shown how important this is. This is a big problem. Now, I think for our region, we're also seeing this. It's not just, we have to buck the trend. And I think what we're proposing here is a way to buck the trend with that.
Yeah, I love that. In fact, you make me want to click through to the slide, and it didn't pick up. These might be slightly out of order, but this is showing as we've grown this region, and ESO stands for Entrepreneurial Support Organizations. So these are organizations that are focused on entrepreneurship growing. We've had a growth in that sector in this region, and I do believe you can see it's having an impact on total VC dollars. Like, we are seeing total VC dollars flowing into this region go up over time. We have VC Immersion Day happening this week. There's a lot of activity in that space. We're doing great things to attract dollars. We're building accelerators that help accelerate established startups. But it is alarming to see that orange line. And I think that plays into what we just talked about. Like, the earliest stage dollars that pre-seed to get a company off the ground has fallen apart. And this is a nationwide trend as well, as venture capitalists have they've redeployed their capital towards follow-up funding on portfolio companies that are already in their portfolio to keep them afloat during a difficult period. But it is a challenge, and we need to do things. So I want to ask Matt, those maybe my last question, because we're running out of time, and I want to see if anybody has any questions in here for us. But what do you think the government or universities should be doing? What role should they be playing in inspiring and incentivizing startup formation?
The government needs to help the universities turn out more engineering graduates, one. Two, our community colleges. If you look at the University of Arkansas system, for example, right? We've got the University of Arkansas Fayetteville. We have UAMS. They represent about 90% of operating revenue in the whole system. And then we've got four regional four-year schools: UA Fort Smith, UA Morrilton, UA Pine Bluff, and UALR. By the way, UALR's got great research on cybersecurity that's pretty amazing. But then we've got 8 two-year colleges. And I'm telling you, these community colleges are going to become way more important in the future, because there's going to be a lot more jobs that are going to be in demand. Like, for example, if you look at the Smackover Formation in southern Arkansas, they're now estimating it has 139% of lithium deposits that were known in the U.S. a year ago. So there's tons of lithium there, right? And we know how to mine it, but we need people to be able to weld and be pipe fitters and, right? I know that seems kind of like very broad. But the other thing I wanted to point out, there's all kinds, the University of Arkansas has all kinds of innovation that could be commercialized. If you're a company and you want to collaborate with the university, you get the state of Arkansas, the Arkansas Economic Development Commission has a 33% tax credit for R&D done with the university and the state. Huge opportunity to collaborate there.
Yeah, love that. I know we only have a couple minutes left here. I'll pause, and if there's anybody who has thoughts on these subjects we've been talking about, if you're a resident and you have an opinion, we'd love to hear it. Grab that. There's a mic over here off to our right, or if you have a question for Matt or I, things you're thinking and wondering about.
Here you go.
Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing such a great information. Okay. My question is, since retail value chain is important here, can you give me some startup companies example who are working in other areas than AR? What other areas and what other problems they are trying to solve here, the startup company?
So if I hear you, let me repeat it back. What startup companies that are using AI today in the retail value chain space that we know about?
No, means what all startup companies are here right now who is giving the solutions to companies like Walmart and JB Hunt.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So what startups exist today that are serving the retail value chain? So the first one that comes to mind, I'm going to steal the easy one, so you have to figure out a hard one. First one that comes to mind is Ox. So Sharu Thomas, who came to town several years ago from Georgia Tech, actually RevUnit and Startup Junkie were part of the first, we helped co-create the first version of Fuel Accelerator, and the RevUnit team chose Sharu to be a part of that cohort. But they've fundraised, I want to say, close to 14 million now up to this point in a Series A. If anybody has better data on this and is embarrassed by my numbers, please let me know. But that's one. Matt, do you have one?
Well, White Spider, which is now called Flywheel, was one of them. I'm trying to think. Supply Pike. What's the other one?
Stat
Recovery.
Stat Recovery. Both were acquired recently. This is a recurring theme you will hear.
Yeah, another that was acquired. Case Stack. I could tell you a story about that. We don't have time. It's amazing. But they were acquired. That was a huge deal. And out of that also came Supply Pike, which got acquired. Dan Senker did quite well on that. But those are some that come to mind.
Yeah, those are great. So we got Scott Crenshaw over here with a question. I want to call out, if you want to follow someone who provides a lot of great retail value chain data, follow this guy on LinkedIn. Go ahead, Scott.
Thanks, Josh. Dr. Waller, good morning. Quick question. You have an interesting background because you've straddled industry and academia, and you talked a little bit about the role that industry can play working with government. I'm curious, do you think that there is an appropriate amount of dialogue back and forth between academia and industry, talking about what are the skills that entrepreneurs and others in the market will need to bring about this kind of better entrepreneurial future in our community?
So if I say that back, just to make sure I got it right, it's, do you feel like there's enough dialogue between government and academia and maybe also professionals, businesses?
Industry and academia.
Industry, yeah. So do you think industry and academia are connecting enough around what's needed?
Heck no. I'm serious. That's a great question. I do not think there's enough. When I was dean of the Walton College, I pushed it like a madman. And actually, when I started the Department of Supply Chain Management in 2011, I think one of the reasons why it is number one today is because we connected so much with industry. But no, you're absolutely right. Now, the Walton College is continuing to move in that direction. Brent Williams, the current dean, is outstanding, and he's moving in that direction. But No, all of the higher ed, this is a untapped resource. It's so frustrating to me. Now, we are tapping it, we're moving in the right direction. But I would love to see it ramped up. I mean, seriously, when I have an unfair advantage a little bit because I know who to call upon at the university for help. I know some of the top experts in the world in everything. And so no, you're right. There's an opportunity there.
Yeah, I want to be respectful of time because we are at time. Go ahead, though. Yeah, we'll be fast. We'll be fast in response.
Okay, real quick. You talk a lot about ESOs and entrepreneurial sport. At the beginning, you talked about the gap between that high probability age group or group of individuals. What would support, I'm just curious your perspective, what would support for that group look like from these ESOs specifically?
Okay, so what would support look like from ESOs or others for the age group that has the highest probability of success, the 40 and overs? People like you, Dr. Waller.
Yeah, well, I'm over the hill, but I think for that sweet spot age group, and thank you for the question. This is a good point. I think there has to be investment that will replace their salary for a couple of years and provide them insurance. And we can do that. There's enough money to do things like that. We know it can be done. But that's the most important thing. They've got to have, it doesn't have to completely replace their salary. There's people out there that are willing to take some risk. And we want them, and it is taking a risk, even if you provide for a couple of years of salary.
You need to put some skin in the game. Right? You need some skin in the game, like as a founder.
Yeah, you absolutely need skin in the game. You need to burn the ships, burn the bridges. There's no question about that. But to get started, it takes a while to build a network. And I do think we need to replace salaries and insurance. Those are the two things that come to mind.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're at time. I'll just finish with saying you can't grow what hasn't sprouted. You can't accelerate what hasn't been formed. And you can't fund what doesn't exist. So we all collectively need to support founders. We all need to inspire those who we know in our lives that are entrepreneurial to take that leap of faith on themselves. And we need to ask more of those who are building programming to support those who are highest in probability of succeeding, the 40 and over group. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you all for coming.